and then get you in breakout sessions. So we really designed this hour and a half to hopefully have you talking in small groups as much as possible. Where could this go? You know, as Petra just mentioned, this is maybe just the start of something. It doesn't mean you're going to be planning forever, but doing some things in a, you know, with some sort of method and sequence can really get it off to a good start. So consider what you're doing right now to be in phase one, and that's ideation. We're trying to get all the ideas on the table we can, and as diverse of ideas as we can, from diverse, you know, small and big organizations, from different sectors, from people with different lived experience, all of those things, and then start to do a process of narrowing that down, which we'll actually get into a little bit today. But the survey was the starting part, and thank you to, I think it was like 44 responses on the survey, so a really good start. So once ideas are kind of worked with and discussed, then this narrowing down process to what we refer to as a common agenda. And those of you who've done collective impact work may be really familiar with this term, but all it really means is that as a group wanting to work on a complex problem, you are understanding that problem and its root causes as best you can together. You are developing a shared vision and some goals that support that vision. The goals can be, you know, somewhat separate, but they all work together towards a common vision. So there's some good work that obviously has to happen to shape a common agenda, but so important to do, to lay the right foundation. Then you know, then it gets into the action piece, right? And I do want to really clarify that this is not necessarily like a strategic plan for an organization that maybe some of you are used to doing, or for an agency, but this is really a plan that talks about what you're already doing for the most part, and how that can be stitched together in a much tighter, more cohesive, more synergistic way. Because as you know, people are all very busy. We work in silos a lot, and the power of this is bringing it together so you can have a lot more impact. And I think there's great potential with your group. Then the implementation part, right? The exciting part. You don't want to wait too long to get to implementation, but at the same time, you don't want to rush to get there, because good planning can make sure the implementation goes as well as it could, and monitoring that. And then kind of a fifth phase that I often talk to collaboratives about is a really important step of evaluating things and assessing how the relationships are going, what progress you're making, and then making adjustments so you can go back and do implementation differently with what you've learned. So that's, you know, just a continuous improvement kind of process. So keep in mind this, I just put this out here so you think about, you know, that where what we do today fits into a larger picture. But it depends on the resources and the time involved. I mean, this kind of process, you know, it can take just a couple of months. It can take longer. It just depends on how you want to go about it. So let's dive into today, right? So today we're focused on ideation. We're going to build off of those ideas. I spent a lot of time looking at the survey input. It's been fun to see that. So I will give you a little bit of a systems framework to think about the input that you provided. And then we will go into breakout session number 1, which is focused on alignment. Okay, and that piece is particularly whatever organization or agency or group that you're here on behalf of. How do the ideas that came out of the survey align with what you do and what you care about? So that'll be the first exercise we do together to see where there might be some potential momentum that you can build. And then the second breakout session gets into these ideas that have brought you together and what you care about, right? How can these different ideas work towards climate justice, towards climate mitigation, and towards climate resilience? And we'll talk a little bit more about those terms when we get there. We'll finish with looking at next steps just briefly at the end of the workshop. Quickly, I just want to offer to you a few ideas about how we can work together best in our short time together. We will finish by 5 o'clock. You know, you've probably done a lot of Zoom, more than you want, but it's always helpful with these kind of groups, especially when you don't all know each other yet, is to have your video on as much as you can and to have your audio off when you're not speaking, so we don't have any, you know, interference. Please do use chat for questions or comments. Michelle and Petra are keeping an eye on that for me as I present. So if you have any questions as I'm going along, don't hesitate, they'll interrupt me. I want to make sure if something's not clear that I can help out with that. Then as you get into breakout sessions, and really for the whole of this collaborative endeavor, really encourage you to be open to new ideas, right? You may come in with, well, this is what my organization does, and I want to make sure that's what we do. And that's understandable because there's a reason you do what you do. But this is really a great opportunity to learn about what other people are doing and hopefully get some new perspectives that you didn't have, that are different ways of tackling the problem that maybe is not currently on your radar. And finally, in those breakout sessions, so important that everybody gets a chance to participate. So just step up and step back so that everybody gets kind of an equal amount of airtime to share their ideas. The big question that you're looking at today and moving forward: how can we work together in San Mateo County to best address climate change and realize climate justice? And I kind of, Petra's probably looking at that, I tweaked a one word there, realize. And the reason I put realize in there is because there were so many comments in the survey about the importance of working with underserved communities, addressing social justice through a climate lens, that it really seemed like the ambition is there for you not just to work towards it, but to actually achieve it. I think that is certainly possible with this group. So when you think about this kind of big question, trying to tackle a complex societal problem, really, I want to offer you this idea of a systems lens, and to think about, not just kind of isolated interventions or policies or practices, but rather kind of how all those things work together. And so it's nice to start with kind of a basic definition of systems, and this one is simply a set of things interconnected in such a way that they produce their own pattern of behavior over time. Right now, nature itself is the perfect system, right? There's that interdependence. I think we'd probably be a lot better off if all of our systems tried to emulate what nature is doing. So, you can kind of keep that in mind. But for purposes of our discussion today, you're really focusing on human-created systems. These systems that we have created, that the way they're currently set up we're facing this climate crisis, we're facing systemic racism and injustices. How can those systems be the question really from a systems perspective is, how can those systems be altered or changed so that climate mitigation occurs and climate resilience and climate justice? So with that in mind, here are the systems that emerged from the survey input that you all provided. They fit into 10 different categories that you could also think about as systems, right? So that is transportation, housing, building energy, work, food, consumer goods, adaptation, nature, water, and education. Each one of these fairly complex on their own. Each one of these related to climate change and to climate justice. This is a foundational piece to help get the discussion going. But we also know that these different systems are not isolated. They interact a lot with each other. With the housing and transportation, clearly there's a lot of links between transportation choices and where housing is located. So there's so many ways that you can play with these ideas over time, but to kind of get us off onto a place where we can all begin together, I'm going to ask you to think about the ideas that you brought up and how they fit into these different systems. So to get you thinking about that, and to use just one example of the 10 different systems that you talked about in the survey, is the food system is one. And if we're thinking about what it might be possible to move towards climate resilience and justice, and what would be the components, and so components is going to be a word we'll talk a lot about, but what kind of components in a system might lead to this bigger change that you desire? And this is just a kind of a quick sampling of how you might look at components. Right. So clearly, alternatives to meat, changing diets, plant-based burgers, one possible component. Farmers markets in every community. Farms that's kind of surround urban areas like this one not too far from you in Pescadero. farms in the middle of urban areas, like this 4-acre Black-owned farm in the middle of Oklahoma City. I've had the pleasure of working with the owner of this farm in a collaborative there. And this is, this gets into the issue of not just addressing climate through local food systems, but also addressing justice, addressing food deserts, food insecurity, which is also what this farm in New Orleans is doing in the middle of their large park. And this is called, it's the DAT Youth Farm. But so the other aspect of this is that it's also about youth development, and it's about training youth to become leaders in the food movement and to strive for food justice. So there's many pieces you can start to think about as far as what the system might entail. Backyard gardens, right? Seems like a small thing. Yes, that is my daughter. Proud to holding up for carrots. But 40% of food was grown in victory gardens during World War II. So a small thing can add up to a lot. Reduce food waste. Okay, a whole other element of the system. We know food waste is a significant issue, and that will focus more on the demand side of the food system. So you've got supply and demand pieces. You've got questions of who's growing the food, who's distributing the food, who's benefiting from the current food system, what are the impacts of the current food system, right? So every one of these is something that is worth diving into depending on where you want to focus. So this is what we're going to be thinking about today, is your ideas and how they relate to components of a larger system that you may want to change. You get to decide that over time. As we enter into this work together, I want to also encourage this idea of a collaborative mindset, right? You're all doing, I know a lot of your organizations, you're doing a lot of great work. You are a star in many ways, but this is about being part of a constellation, right? This is about kind of subduing, suppressing, I should say, your organizational ego and just saying, okay, I'm here for a larger mission. And what I do may actually play a very small role in this. It may play a large role. I don't know. It depends on what everybody else is doing. The more you bring that to the table, the more you kind of leave the organizational ego at the door and bring yourself fully into this potential shared mission, the much better off, the much more powerful this work will be. So let's start on that note today. The final thing I want to grab before we jump into breakout sessions here is I just want to recognize some really other important input that came into the survey that we won't directly use today. That's because it gets at more what is kind of like the next phase of work. And that is, once you've identified the systems that you want to influence, how are you going to change those systems? The how, right? So if you think about what we're doing today as more the what are you going to try to change? This is more like policy levers and community engagement levers and public awareness and education, all these sort of things. So we've definitely captured this. You're not going to let these ideas, they're all really important ideas, but we'll be using those further down the road. But let's go into breakout sessions in just a minute. So let me explain how this first one's going to work. Each session, it looks like we're going to have about 20, 25 minutes for each breakout session if things go smoothly here. We'll see how we can get you all into groups in just a minute. Michelle is going to be randomly kind of assigning you to groups in just after I kind of go over these directions here. So remember, the theme of this first breakout session is alignment, and it's twofold. First, it is you going through the worksheet. You might have gotten a PDF before that showed this worksheet, but you're actually going to get access to the Google Doc itself, and you all are going to be able to type into the Google Doc. So hopefully you have the ability to do that. And what you're going to do is you're going to go kind of scan across the document and look for the system and system components that relate to what your organization does and what you care about as an organization, and write your organization name next to those things. And that'll be 5 minutes of quiet time. So your first 5 minutes in your group will actually be quiet. Then you're going to have time, and the groups will be 5 or less people if we get it set up the way we intended to. You're going to spend maybe 2 minutes each sharing the ones that you marked for your organization, and just explain a little bit about whatever they may be as to why it relates to what your organization does and cares about. Then to wrap up this first breakout session, after everybody's shared, you're going to talk about, well, were there any commonalities here? are there two or more of our organizations actually kind of working on similar things? And you may find that's the case, you may not, but just whatever comes out of that. We'll come out of the breakout session. I'll ask a couple of you to maybe just to do a brief share out among any alignment you found among your organizations, and then we'll move into the second breakout session. Realize as a matter of process, we're going to be gathering ideas throughout this in the Google Doc. And so all of your ideas will be, we'll hold on to those, and those will be building blocks for the next time you get together to work on this. So let me go into the worksheet itself. I think Michelle's going to put the directions in the chat so you can reference those. But you can see on this collective climate goal planning tool we've developed, this column right here. Okay, this is the one we're working on, and you notice I've grayed out the ones that you're not supposed to be typing in. So if it's gray, don't go into the gray. Yeah, and I mentioned already, right? Like we just look at the very first one that comes up, transportation. Here's the system. And then in the system, the ideas that, again, that you brought out in the survey, there's like 6, 7 different components. And so let's say you go to the first one, bicycle and pedestrian infrastructure. Well, if I work at the County Office of Education, I'm going to probably say, okay, safe routes to school, that relates to this. I put a few in here, of course, just as an example. County Office of Education may say, wait a minute, we're no longer doing that, so they'll take it out. You can clean it up for me. The County Office of Sustainability has an active transportation program, or at least that's on the website. So you can kind of add things as you wish. It shouldn't, hopefully you can do it in 5 minutes, because, if you're an organization that has nothing to do with transportation, you might be going down to like building energy, because that's more what you do. So you can find the systems, and then you can find the specific components that relate to what you're doing. So that's all we're going to do in this first breakout session. You'll have at least 20 minutes. I'll give you a 5-minute warning. And so when that 5-minute warning comes, it's time for you to start to compare what your organizations are doing. But you'll have, at least 20 minutes, if not a little bit more. Well, welcome back to the big room, everybody. I hope you had a good discussion in your smaller groups there. Before we go on to the next session, I thought we just need to take a moment to have 1 or 2 groups maybe share out a little bit of any takeaway you might have had. Particularly, there was 2 steps to alignment, right? The first one was just looking at your organization and these different ideas. And I was kind of overwhelmed watching you populate this Google Doc. I was happy to see it not crash. I don't think there's some weird formatting things, but it looked like you didn't let that get in the way. And so thank you. Wow, you really took that to heart, which was wonderful. It is clear that there is a lot of great work going on in San Mateo County, right? This is just about how to make it more coherent. So the second part then was, as you shared out among the 3, 4, or 5 of you, did you find any commonalities? Did you see potential alignment among your organizations? Just feel free to speak up or raise your virtual hand. And can anybody comment from any potential alignment that you saw emerging in your particular group? Feel free to unmute yourself, speak up, or maybe you didn't see it, but you had some other interesting observation from your discussion.
Yeah, let me get in. This is Benny Acevedo from Healthways. We were not able to cross compare of different organizations' common activities, but we look into the systems and components that we were trying to address. But we found some things that were missing. Mm-hmm. So just like health systems is not there, mm-hmm. And then one of my colleagues was mentioning another, I will population is another, is another system. So if we try to look into the overall climate system, as variables or parameters that would affect the climate, we would be looking into the physical, social, economic, aspects or systems and components. That's why we were trying to look for those, So So we didn't have that time to, to cross compare of our own activities, organizational activities.
Fair enough. No, thank
Yeah.
you, Acevedo. I appreciate your reflection there. And I think you can carry those ideas really well into the next section. So when we talk about climate justice, maybe some of those health population type things that you didn't see, you'll be able to add there. But your point's also well taken that this is not comprehensive yet. There'll be more opportunities to add things beyond today, of course. So, but thank you for putting that front of mind. Did any other one other group want to share a little bit about what they talked about?
I don't know if we did ours incorrectly, but no one in our breakout room talked. I think we just filled out the document.
Oh, wow. You were busy filling out the document. Organizations must be doing a lot. Okay.
Well, I mean, it's noticeable. It was pretty amazing to see what everyone is up to. That was in itself a wonderful experience, but no one spoke in our breakout.
Oh, okay. You were the quiet, more the library section.
You were expecting to be prompted because you said the beginning would be quiet.
I see.
Sorry.
That's okay. That's all right. Hey, no matter what, there was definitely a lot of idea generation taking place. So,
and I'm super impressed that it was Lauren and Susan who were quiet. Guys usually have plenty to say.
Right.
I think Susan's actually right. Like we were both waiting for direction.
Okay.
Oops.
You're rule followers. The first thing in systems change is you got to break all those rules. So you're not allowed to do that anymore. Yes. So please, Lauren and Susan in particular, you're going to talk a lot in this next breakout session. So let's get into that. Let me share my screen just to give you a few prompts for that.
Actually, Valerie wanted to share, I think.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Valerie.
You know what, I actually had a question that maybe we can wait till the end, but I'm hoping that there's a way that you'll be able to share people's information with us in terms of, like who you are and where you're from, so that we can begin to learn and identify more of the commonalities that we can work together to be able to do the things that need to be done.
Great.
One of the things we're going to be doing, Valerie, is leaving this open, the document, for like another week, so that all of the people who aren't in the room, because obviously not everybody is in the room who we would love to have in the room, will have an opportunity to add things.
Oh, good. Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Thank you, Valerie. Okay, so with the second and our last breakout session, which will be about the same duration, about 20 minutes. Oh, I meant to do this. Okay. So, we're dealing with some pretty complex issues. So this is just kind of shorthand for a couple key terms going forward. As a group, you're most likely going to develop definitions of these that make sense to you as stakeholders in San Mateo County. So just take this as just, again, a launching point. So, very generally speaking, right? Climate justice is all about relating the causes and effects of climate change to social justice, right? We know there's so many, the disproportionate causes by certain groups in society and the disproportionate effects, particularly on low-income people, communities of color, and so forth, is all about, climate justice. And then climate mitigation, simply, as you are so well versed in, and many of you could explain this incredibly well, is just, reducing greenhouse gas emissions, and just helping slow down this climate change that is ever growing. And then climate resilience is, just the concept, of course, of resilience. How do we get through this? We know it's going to be rough. It's already rough. It's already having big impacts. And how do we bounce back from those impacts? So think about, this is on the worksheet. So you'll find these definitions there as well. So this, you can't possibly in 20 minutes tackle these issues, but I'm going to give you a way maybe to dive in at least into a little bit into it. So first of all, there's really just a couple simple things here. If you didn't already, make sure the first thing you do when you get in there is to quick introduction, name, organization, right? So acknowledge each other. Then there's no quiet writing time this time. So if one person, and you might be in groups of like 4, roughly people. So if one person can just kind of facilitate and just know that you have 20 minutes and to try to move the group along. And then if one person can just be the designated note taker, and let me explain what that's going to entail. You're actually going to be assigned to one of these groups here. By either the breakout room might actually say transportation, or it might say number 1. And we'll put these in the chat for you as well. But so here's where you get out of your comfort zone a little bit, perhaps. I don't know this is going to be randomly assigned. So you might end up in a group that has very little to do with what you actually do. And I hope you take that as, hey, this is great. I can really learn about something a little different. You all have something to say about all of these systems, I guarantee it, by the nature of your work. Or maybe you end up in a group where it's near and dear to what you do, and you get to add a little bit more in that way. But essentially, for whatever you're assigned, you're going to determine the links to climate justice, mitigation, and/or resilience. Okay, so for different components. Now, realistically, each one of these systems from your ideas has like 7 or 8 components. You might just get through 1 or 2 of those, and that's fine. Really, the discussion is what's most important here. We'll kind of see where this goes, how useful this is to you, as to whether we would continue doing this in some other format. But think of like the big point of this part is, okay, now that you have a little better sense of what people are doing, or at least we have a spreadsheet that shows it, right? What of these things might actually have potential as leverage points to pursue climate justice, climate mitigation, or climate resilience, okay? So you can kind of enter into this any way you want. If I just go back to the worksheet here, let's see. Of course, my cursor is in the way here. Sorry about that. All right. So back in the worksheet, what I'm going to do in just a minute, I'm going to take the gray out of these 2 columns, okay? So let's say I'll just keep using the first one here just since it's right there. If you're in the transportation group, you can decide, okay, let's look at public transit infrastructure and options, right? And I'm going to take the gray out of these 2 columns. The first column, you go back to the title, the first one is climate justice. The next one is climate mitigation and/or resilience. So you may just, as a group, talk about what are the implications of working on public transit infrastructure and options for climate justice? What are the implications for climate mitigation or climate resilience? And again, this is not like scientific, this is just your best understanding. And just get a few ideas down, and hopefully a note taker will populate a few ideas in there. Once you feel like you've talked about one component enough, move on to maybe 1 or 2 more. You could also decide, hey, we just want to talk about climate justice. We don't necessarily want to talk about the other ones. You could then just kind of go down that column as you wish, okay? So again, we'll put the instructions in the chat as well. Michelle's going to get you into different breakout rooms, introduce yourself, and then just kind of have at it in terms of thinking about those components in whatever assigned system you're in. Okay. All right, let's do it. All right, welcome back, everybody. You've made it through two breakout sessions. We knew that was just going to be kind of dipping your toes into how do the ideas that came out of the survey, how do they relate to climate justice, climate mitigation, and climate resilience, right? So this is what you'll be playing with for a little while now. Just any, we're down to like 5 minutes, and we want to make sure we end on time and in respect for you all being here. Was there anything that anybody you'd like to volunteer that kind of came out of your discussion? Anything that you thought had potential or was frustrating, or I mean, what was it like to start to think about these different ideas?
Matt?
Yes, go ahead.
Larry, our team, 3 of us were in the work group, and I think generally, the discussion was around the importance of the green jobs and reducing gas house. But I think the way we took it is this cannot be a novelty. These things have to become ingrained into our ongoing economy. So for example, as we learn of individuals doing some great things in companies with operations that reduce greenhouse, we have to publicize that. And then in turn, we have to get those same concepts into 100 other companies that do it on an ongoing way. As we learn of green jobs that get part of the economy and pay decent sums, we have to enlarge on that. So again, it's just not a novelty thing, but now they're ongoing in the economy. They can compete against traditional jobs, and that's how you begin the whole work area now gets to become ongoing in the idea of an ongoing green economy. I hope that makes sense what I'm saying.
Yeah, no, I think there's a couple. I mean, one thing is that any one of these systems, you can make an argument as to why that system should be the priority. So we could take from your remarks that because of the importance of work in our lives, because of large organizations and businesses in San Mateo County, there's potentially a lot of leverage to have some impact, right? But the other aspect of this, which we'll just, dive into even more, is what are the implications for a focus on work for climate justice, right? If we talk about like new green jobs, clean energy jobs, are those jobs that are going to address inequities? Is there going to be training programs and support so that all people have access to these jobs? And those are things you can think about, right? And then of course, from a climate mitigation resilience standpoint, it's kind of in your remarks a little bit, but it's like, would a focus on really going after big, I shouldn't say going after, that's the wrong word, working with big employers, would that have the potential to scale into significant reductions of greenhouse gases, right? And then the resilience piece is kind of a different thing. Is, if you think about the realm of work, if that was to pivot to let's really support local businesses, local organizations. I think it was even in the work one, what some of your ideas was to let's really support community-based organizations. Does that provide more long-term resilience for San Mateo County, because you no longer have to depend on external entities, but your business environment is strong enough, your nonprofit environment can withstand things, right? So all of those implications there, and I wish we had more time to hear from more of you. But remember, this is just the start of the conversation. I'll just say one thing before I pass it back to Petra, is that the worksheet you started working on, I'll kind of clean that up a little bit for you, but we will, Petra will probably put out an announcement that it's going to be open for another week or so, and really encourage you to maybe at least get back in there once, and particularly for those topic areas that you want to weigh in on more, that you didn't get a chance in your breakout session, that you can go in there and you can add more ideas. And that way we can really get off to a good start here. So it's been a pleasure talking to all of you, listening to you. I was able to pop into some breakout sessions. So thank you. Back to Petra.
So a huge thank you to Matt. And as I confessed to Susan Wright, that this came out of something that a panel that Matt and I were both on that she hosted. And it just shows all of this energy that we have. And I'd love to take this energy and make it more organized. So hopefully we can move some conversations forward by continuing with this conversation. So the next time we meet will be October 28th, same time, same place, 3:30. And we will get an invitation to that, as well as the link to the spreadsheet. Probably on Monday, if you don't mind, so we can have a break. And we will definitely be encouraging everybody on our mailing list to continue to fill this out so we can get as many ideas as possible and see how much, but even just, I think the beginning of everybody just really getting to know what everyone is doing is super valuable. So thank you so much all for participating, for staying on to the bitter end. And I hope this is the end of your day. And we will see you all next time, and feel free to reach out anytime to me or Matt or Michelle.